Hello, everybody. Welcome to our online roundtable. So cool to see so many people joining. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Great to see you. So before we begin, my name is Sil. I started into design systems a while ago because I wanted to meet and learn from like-minded people. And I'm so excited to do this panel today together with Omlet and have this massive round of experts. Thank you so much to our experts and panelists for taking the time, for sharing their knowledge with our community. Big fan of you. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you, thank you. Before we begin with the panel, I would like to invite you to our introvert-friendly networking, which is taking place in our Miro board. So I will share the link in the chat in a second. Just want to invite you to join us. So we have this world map here. Feel free to, pin where you're joining us from. I'm, for example, here in Germany from Munich. Maybe you can also leave a fun fact about yourself. So fun fact about me is I haven't been to the Oktoberfest this year, something like that. Feel free to network with people and use the Miro board. And we also have some fun icebreakers here, just for you to know. Let us know how you currently feel about your design system or design tools. Feel free to join us and explore the board. There are a bunch of resources. You can post jobs, or if you're looking for a job, also feel free to leave your LinkedIn profile. And now to our main board, the online roundtable, where you can also leave questions. So please leave your questions and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end of the panel. And we can also answer some of them async. All right, so big thank you to all of you for joining us and also to Omlet for making this online roundtable possible. Let's go, Adam. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Sil.
Okay, I will stop sharing and let's start with the roundtable.
Great. Well, again, thank you, Sil. Thank you to Into Design Systems. Thanks for everyone for being here. I'm really excited about this one today. I think this is going to be a really good one. So my name's Adam. I work on the Omlet team, and I have a cool job. My job is to essentially meet and talk to design system teams, learn from them, and then meet and talk to other design system teams and kind of share what I learn. And so that's like, I think that's a pretty cool job. And so I've had the very good fortune to have met all three of our panelists, Elyse, Marcela, and Brian. And they have shared some incredible insights with me. And what we want to do is now have a little chat about some of their expertise. So I think this will be a really good one. And before we dive in, let's do a few intros so you can meet who we're chatting with today. So let me first popcorn over to Elyse and take it away.
Yeah, hello. My name is Elyse Holladay. Thank you, Adam, for having us. I'm super excited. I work at Color Health. That's color.com. We're a virtual cancer clinic. We provide an employer benefit so that your company can offer you early cancer detection screenings, diagnosis, and support all the way through a potential cancer journey. A partnership with the American Cancer Society. And I am our design system team of one. So I manage our components, like helping with both the design side and the engineering side. I probably come from a little bit more of an engineering background than a lot of design folks here. And I think that kind of colors the way that I think about systems. I've been working in design systems for a really long time, like back in the proto design system style guide era. Happy to chat about the olden days with anybody who's been around. And for those of you who are new, less than 5 years or so in your career, like things have changed a ton. So I have seen it, and just really excited about the future of design systems and really thinking about the way that we can actually support our products and our businesses. So really happy to be here. Thank you, Adam. Brian, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Elyse. Hey everyone, I'm Brian Alfaro. I am a hybrid designer, developer. I think the name changed from UX designer to engineer, design, whatever, unicorn, whatever you want to call it. I like to code, I like to design. I'm living out in the DC area. I'm currently have the privilege to be working alongside a really great team, design team, engineering team, product team over at the Washington Post. I lead our design system there. If you don't know what the Washington Post is, please go check it out. Obviously, go to washingtonpost.com. Yeah, you know, that place for news, your place for everything that you really want to catch up on. But yeah, it's a real pleasure to be a part of there. We're building a lot of great stuff. So we have a design system that is open source. You can go check it out, the build.washington.com, where our team is documenting, building out components, building out foundations, guidance, and things like that. So it's been a really great whirlwind to kind of stand up our first inaugural kind of design system here at the Post. But we've done such great work, I think, as a team that we've learned so much, not just from our successes, but our failures. And I'm just really happy to share a lot of those things with you all today. So super stoked. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Marcela.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm Marcela Rodriguez Joos. I'm a UX designer, I guess by degree, and now leading the design system here at UPS. I've been with UPS for 8 years, and it seems our journey into design system started about maybe 5.5 years ago with the current design system. But not to say that it's been the only design system that we've had. We've had many. And so I think now the concentration has been in really putting the emphasis on the work that we're doing now and trying to get everybody to kind of join in on this one design system so that we can create those efficiencies and consistencies and better collaboration across. So it's very exciting, and I'm super excited to be here. Also a little nervous, but you know, with Elyse and Brian and the team here, I know we're going to have a great conversation. So thank you all. I'm going to try to not look at the participants count because it keeps kind of going up, but you know what? It's going to be a great conversation. So thanks for having me.
You just have so many friends, Marcela.
Yes, we do.
Well, yeah, thank you all. And so the topic that we have today, I think is particularly interesting, because I've seen a lot of over the last year and a half or so, and I'm sure many of you have over the longer course of time have seen topics that are like really specific to how do I make tokens or something specific to components or what should documentation look like. That's not what we're going to talk about today for the most part. We're going to talk about, to me, a topic that I don't see a whole lot about, but I also think is very important. And that's about essentially, how do you make sure that your design system is actually having an impact? Because we all know that design systems, in theory, should be delivering some really outstanding value around efficiency and collaboration and speed and productivity. But the question then comes down to, well, how do we know that's actually happening? And we've got all three panelists here today are experts in this, and we've been chatting about this, and I think it's going to be a really good discussion, and we'll also kind of see where it goes. We might go some interesting directions as well. So why don't I kick it off with Elyse? I'm gonna call you up first, but help us. I think it'd be good to sort of get a definition down of what is impact from a design system standpoint. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's a little hard to pin down. And I mean, I hate to start the whole thing with like, it depends, which is like everybody's favorite answer, but truly like what the specific impact looks like at your business will depend on your business. But kind of taking a step back from that, first, when you think about this, you're like, oh, like, okay, business impact or business value. What is that? I think the first thing that comes to people's mind is money. Like, oh, well, we launched this feature, we launched this product, and that helped us make money. But you, I'm sure, know already that it can be very hard to tie design or design systems directly to a money metric, right? Like the thing that you are building as a design system practitioner does not directly connect to, you know, a conversion number or something like that, typically. But this is where we get into talking about things like efficiency or consistency. And these are the reasons that these are buzzwords around design systems, because these are the kind of things that a business cares about. You know, can we build stuff faster? Can we, I hate to say it, but like, can we do more with less, right? Like, can we get designs and UIs that are more consistent for our users? Because we know that that actually really matters to the end user. You know, if you think about how the person on the other end of the screen sees, uses, feels about the product, right? Like that's why consistency is important. It's not just like for its own sake, right? It's like what the experience of the product is actually like, you know, and that person, like they don't care about design systems. They just know that they go through a flow and like the navigation and buttons are all different and they can't complete the form and they're frustrated and that's their experience. And our C levels, like from the business perspective, they don't care about design systems either, right? They care that the person can't complete the form. They care that the, you know, like the user can't do the thing that is going to be, you know, make them successful, like trying to do whatever they need to do. And so when I think about business impact or business value from a design system perspective, I'm really thinking about this. I've kind of boiled it down to what I think is kind of a simple definition, which is like work that demonstrates change, right? It does something, it changes somebody's behavior, it creates some kind of outcome. And a lot of times with design systems, that behavior or that, you know, that changed behavior is for our engineers and our designers. We're changing the way that they build UI. But the ultimate goal, of course, is that we're changing the way that they build UI so that there is an impact to the end user, which is an impact to the business.
Yeah, and
Can
just
I?
to,
Oh,
oh, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Marcela. No,
I was
you can
going to
go.
say, as we define, right, like the design system impact, it's a lot of times it goes to the external customer, right? What are they seeing and what are kind of like their friction points and so forth. And we're trying to solve for what we're delivering as a product. But when you think of it also internally, that impact is the way that we work, that collaboration, the connected across, right, different platforms and different products, and understanding that we're speaking the same language and that we're trying to achieve the same things. And so I think that that is also very important, right? Because if, you know, once all of the teams are not having to spend the time recreating, right, and more so reusing, then it really is opening up those gates, breaking down those silos. And I think that's very important from a business perspective, because then the technical debt, you know, how long it takes to recreate all of these things, the maintenance tail, et cetera, is reduced. And so I think that also brings in some of that impact to the equation. And Brian, go ahead. I don't know
Yeah,
if it
no.
was similar.
Yeah, it was similar. I just kind of build on that. I think as I thought about this question, you know, one of the things that I really think that impacts, like real impact on a business is we tend to think of things like consistency and kind of like the go-tos for design systems. But I know like when we try to sell that to C-suite, they're just like, yeah, well, you know, we could do that. Well, we could do whatever. So like a lot of people I talk to like struggle with, how do I even get this design system? How do I get buy-in, right? How do I get, you know, all that? Because the impact's not clear for a lot of these folks. And while we can talk about, you know, the level of consistency, I think it still leans heavily on like design and maybe developers. But I think when we think about value, like a lot of times when we approach design systems, we think about clean slates. I like to think about design systems like let's just bring value first. And that may look ugly, like the package might not be perfect. But what is important there is that there is a start of like a cultural change of how we're talking about the work. And it requires some time to definitely get there. But I think the value is emerging as folks see it. Like, don't wait for the full buy-in, start the work. And what I find the impact that you'll see is less so on like, hey, you know, is this consistent all the way across? But the quality of life for the adopters have improved when we think about our developers, product managers, even designers, obviously, like people start thinking about the work differently, and all those other things fall into place. Consistency, time to ship, all those other things that we might think of like traditional metrics of impact. But the quality and the cultural shift of design systems that I've seen on a lot of different organizations is huge at different scales too. It doesn't have to be, you know, the full package. It can just be a piece of that.
If I agreed with that anymore, Brian, I think my head would fall off from nodding. So like plus 100 to all of that.
And as you said, Brian, I think it's also right as you're changing that culture, it's sharing those perspectives, right? Similar to this panel, right? We all have different levels of expertise. We all bring something different to the table. And as we're creating these things or right these solutions, we're able to kind of lean on the people that may know more about one area than the other. Like an example, both of you are developers, and my knowledge is like basic HTML, right? But it's like leaning on people that know a little bit more, baking in accessibility, quality, best practice, right? It becomes this full package. And when our leadership sees, right, that efficiency is coming through, it definitely, starts kind of like adding up and truly speaking to them in a different way.
No, we're at a very interesting point of the year where maybe your company is thinking about 2025 planning. Maybe strategy is evolving, the company strategy is evolving, shifting. Maybe the strategy of the teams that you're working with has changed and evolved. Maybe the engineering team, maybe the product team has changed and evolved. And so from a design system strategy standpoint, I'm going to pass this to you, Marcela, is how often do you need to reassess or realign your design system strategy, when it comes to the business strategy changes?
So if my team is listening, they're probably like, oh my gosh, what is she going to say here, right? Because it seems like, from our backlog and the things that we're absorbing, it's continuously changing, right? And we try to plan for it as best as possible. But at UPS, we've been almost in a transformation for a couple of years. And I think one of the things that is extremely important as we're assessing kind of what to focus on and how to continue delivering quality products or quality, pieces of the design system to empower the product development is to stay ahead of the puck. And one of the things that is really important for us here is being included and involved in a lot of the different projects and initiatives that matter. And with that, we're actually able to understand where we need to kind of reassess. And so typically, quarterly, you're looking at those strategies, or even once our PI planning is like over, we're evaluating what is it that we need where do we need to concentrate to be able to bring in that value, stay aligned, look ahead, maybe include some of that testing, start reevaluating even some of the things that we've done in the past to ensure that they're still relevant. And then, just potentially focus on a couple of high visibility projects so that we can really deliver what other products are going to be leaning on as being those reusable parts.
Yeah, to kind of plan, I love that you talked about like alignment in terms of like product, and then we have our own things like your backlog of a bunch of stuff that you want to work on, but then maybe product roadmap changes, and it's really hard to stay in true sync, right? And I think a lot of times folks tend to see like at the start of design systems like a bottleneck. Hey, you're slowing us down. Hey, we want to make this change. Why aren't you working on this thing? And I think an important concept that I've come to learn is that design systems work really outside of the cadence and speed of the product roadmap. And I think that's okay. Like that's okay to say and okay to do. I think I saw something in the chat there that was like, hey, isn't it important? Like whatever strategic, like it boils down to design system. And sometimes that is true. There's a nice alignment that happens. But when I think about, how can we stay relevant? I think thinking ahead, you said it best, Marcel, is like trying to be proactive is like one of the, if your team can get there, that would be really great. I mean, a lot of times we're chasing and redoing and retroing, but if you can get to that proactive state, it is super helpful. And I guarantee you, while you're working on that proactive state, the trajectory will change, and where you were going is probably not where they're going anymore. But I think what's important is not so much that like we instantly change at a turn of a dime or whatever. It's more that we continue down the path of like what was valued. It's still valuable. So say you're working on like inputs, or you need to get your, all your accessibility in place, whatever it may be, that's still valuable. And I think we have to understand like design systems aren't necessarily like a small car you can turn around. It's like a big ship, and it takes some time for that ship to turn around. But we eventually align, in different places. And I found that a lot of times we, try to keep our head down, but also, take it out of the water for a little bit and see what's going on. It's a little bit of that both of like trying to find somewhat alignments to say, okay, if you're a comet, flying around and I'm going to launch this ship, how close can I get to you before we find that alignment? And you might miss. And I think that's okay. But the value that you brought is still there. And the things that your team built are still going to be there. And you'll be surprised how many times people go back to that. And then now you already have it ready to go. So I would say like definitely be proactive, and it's okay to miss the mark sometimes.
Okay. So I have whenever I talk to other design system teams, this is a challenge that comes up where some teams are how do I say this? Let's just say it's a tough question to answer, because and I feel this. I live within like the marketing team, so I feel this as well. Let me say it like this: if you're a salesperson, you have a quota, and there's a direct line to I made a sale, and the sale was this much, right? It's really challenging within the design world to make that link. So, Elyse, we've been talking about this previously, so I'll pass to you first. How, and this is different at every company, right? But there might be someone in leadership that says, well, I want that link. I want a direct link. But you can't really, right? But you still need to give leadership something. So what does that look like from your perspective of actually, and this goes back to impact as well, how do you actually make that link, or attempt to, or at least, start that without going into, well, we created 50 components this quarter, so that's good, right? Which that's certainly the wrong way to go. So what would you think?
Yeah, I was just kind of speaking about this at ClarityConf a couple of weeks ago, where I was saying the delivered thing is not the impact, right? Like the component itself has no impact. The impact is what happens when somebody uses it. And I think, Brian, this is kind of touching on what you were just saying, where it's like, we're going to try to deliver stuff that helps the product team, get somewhere, do something. But like we can, do a bunch of components, we can be ahead of them, we can be proactive. And then they're like, actually, we're not going to ship that. And so you have, by some metric, right, like not delivered any value, because you have not done anything that's actually like linkable to some kind of business outcome, right? Like some product team actually like shipping what they were supposed to ship, or what have you. But that doesn't mean that you haven't done anything useful, like you were saying, right? Like somebody's going to need that probably if you're doing, accessibility work, like that's always going to be impactful. Adam, that is a really, really hard question, because the reason it's hard, I mean, like, I don't know how to answer that, because we can't just say, well, we delivered X, we delivered some component, it had this value, or even to be able to say we helped this product team ship whatever, therefore we made, this many dollars. Like even that is very, very challenging. But I think to, Marcela, you were kind of speaking about this, like, how do we know or get a sense of what the product teams are doing, what their goals and metrics are, and how do we support them? So, I mean, I can speak, Adam, I know we had some other questions. I don't know if you want to get into it now, but like I can speak a little bit to some of the things that we've done, some of the projects we've done, and some of the ways that we've been thinking about the design system and how it's helped us, get products out faster, right? Like make it possible for teams to move quicker. Some surveys and stuff that we're doing. Brian, I saw you were about to hop in. You go first.
I was going to say, I think I love all of, and Elyse is right. And I think it's very hard to answer. Like I would be in the same position, like, what the heck do I say here? But it really, I think what's super important, which you just like touched on, I think, and I just wanted to dive in there, was like, it's not the components like you mentioned. And design systems are, as many would know, like an investment. And if I put $10 in the stock market today, am I going to get $1 million tomorrow? I mean, if I'm lucky, I guess. But like realistically, it's probably not going to happen. So when we think about like, if someone's asking me directly, send me a link so I can understand the value that you're bringing, maybe cheekily I'll send them my documentation link or something. But realistically, when we think about it, it's a level of education and a knowledge gap that some folks at that level are not interested in. But what we can do, and I've seen like blogs of folks that say, how much is your developer getting paid? How much is your designer getting paid? If they're going to create this component, like how you can break it down to that if they truly want it. And I do think there is a path there to quantify it if you want to go that route. I will say that if someone's asking you at that level, there's some other red flags there that I would probably say, like, maybe it's not the best company to be at, right? But in a place where folks want to see actual performance, I do think that like even if you don't ship, the design system is an investment and it occurs over time. So we could see like tokens that were implemented, in this project and that project. And then when we finally want to make a change, well, now that realization of that gain is proof in that pudding, right? Like you haven't shipped anything, but it's because it's adopted, it allows people to change quickly and succinctly and efficiently very quickly. But it is an investment, right? There has to be alignment, at least from someone, to be like, let's just do it. And that's why I think like I'm huge on just bring the value, start doing it. And folks will come to understand to be like, oh, remember last time we had to change that color and it was like in 600 different places? Well, guess what? Now we could just do it one time. And they're like, whoa, I didn't even know this was a thing. And that's a link to me, like for them to say, aha moment, because it really does take someone to really see it, to finally understand it. And it's not their fault that we work in it every day. We're kind of thinking about it all the time. And it's not their fault. And maybe they're working in something completely different, thinking at the huge enterprise level or the company level, and they don't have time to think about that. But it is our role to, when we have those moments, to celebrate them and bring them up to leadership so that they can see it. And it may not be a direct link, but it is like a moment that they can understand. And I think storytelling as designers and developers, we have to get better at that. And it's part of like that pitch of like, don't talk about components or tokens, talk about the moments and the stories so that folks can buy into that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's some really, really good stuff in the chat right now around around documentation, around support tickets, around speed, like dashboard, like all of that is really, really good. But Brian, what you were just saying there, I think is so important, and it's like nuanced and it's really, really hard. But one of the reasons it's hard to talk about design system value, especially to leadership, is because when it goes well, nobody knows, right? Like, oh, it was really easy to change that color. Yeah, I just did it. It's just done. So what's the value? Like, and nobody is asking for you to be like, well, here I'm going to calculate the ROI of like how many hours saved, of like how many engineers, and like blah, blah, blah. And like, I bet you almost anything, most executives, I don't know, Adam, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but like, it has not been my experience that directors and C-levels are like, please tell me the calculated ROI for how many dollars our engineers have saved, or blah, 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 or like how many components you have that do this, or how many of your components are accessible. Like, I've never heard them ask for anything like that. They are saying, how fast can we ship this product? When can we get it out? What's the timeline? How many engineers do I have to put on this? How many design resources do I have to put on this? And success, I think, for a design system, showing value, regardless of like how perfect your components are or anything else, is saying, oh, yes, we can put a new theme on that. Yes, we can change that color. Yes, we can do that. Yes, I can onboard, twice as many developers into this product, to make it go faster. Those kinds of things are more valuable because they're not asking about, like, when we think about the kind of metrics, somebody said in the chat, like, what are the like non-negotiable metrics around tracking like efficiency or success? And it's like, I don't even know if there are any, because it's the metric that I need to go to my executives and be like, yes, this helped us go. I keep talking about faster because for us right now, speed is the name of the game. Like, that's the thing that we are focused on, particularly in our business at this moment in time. So I'm thinking about things that are around trust, faster handoffs, and faster time to ship. And that may not be the thing that you and your business are caring about right now, right? Like, you may be caring a lot about design quality, or like, QA, or like fixing bugs, right? Like, maybe you're thinking about those kind of things. You're gonna have different metrics. But, Brian, if you're saying, yeah, we needed to change this color across all of these products, but not these other ones, I can have that done tomorrow. And if you're not raising that to your executives, they don't ever know what's happening. And so when they look at your design system team, they're going, well, you have, 2 designers and 2 engineers, and you're just like over here in the corner building components. And you're like, no, like, it's so valuable. But they don't see that because you're not talking about the moments that are actually giving the value to the business. Like, it took us 1 week to make this massive change that would have taken, 6 weeks. Or, we whatever it is. And I think we often don't do that kind of storytelling, right? We want to find some number to be like, the business, they like money, they like numbers, they want metrics. Therefore, if we can just have this one number, then they'll know that we're valuable. And I just don't think that that's how it works.
If I can add in on there, I mean, many of you may know UPS, right? We're this really, really big logistics company. And we're not supported by just one site, right? We have, I mean, over 35 plus digital touch points, and it's just a massive ecosystem. And as I mentioned before in my intro, we haven't historically had just one design system. We've had many, right? And it's been kind of like the last 5 years work where we're trying to gain get everybody on one design system to be able to promote kind of like that agility and that speed and that efficiency. And we don't have it perfect, right? We still have a lot of work to do to have that connection and that streamlined collaboration. But last year I did a recap of what we were able to accomplish with our design system, right? And you have to have a little bit of creative storytelling too, right? We're all creatives and right, it's the narrative. How can we tell this story? How can we show that impact? And maybe it doesn't come down to, dollars and cents, right? Or actual numbers, but it's about the before and afters, right? Like for us, we were able to show at least over 7 experiences that before were very disjointed, had their own look and feel. Some of them were legacy, some of them just, were all over the place with teams supporting them specifically and having to engineer and kind of figure everything out. And in this recap, I was able to show, look at this, like, this is what we do. This is our branded house. This is how things start to kind of come together. The designer's not having to make these decisions over and over again. So yes, adoption rate. The reuse rate, obviously, when you look at Figma, everything's detached. I start to, freak out a little bit, but in reality, you are seeing the outcome and that value that it's giving the designers reaching out to at least my team, asking questions, wanting to collaborate, wanting to understand. So you do say, right, like the things that don't matter when you're measuring, right? Like how many components you have. I mean, you can have a very bloated design system. That does not mean that it's great, right? But in reality, it's like, of the things that we have, what is truly making that impact? We here at UPS have a very dedicated, testing team, and they look at research, they look at usability, they do surveys, NPS scores. So obviously, if you know where you are, and then you're able to kind of, implement your design system or the new flows or the new connectivity, and then see how that starts impacting the user experience. Obviously, that is a metric that can also add to the value. And so as you think of everything that you are supporting, get creative with it, right? Really think about it. How are you going to make your leadership understand that it's not just about, right, those numbers, but it's also about the ways of working, the collaboration, the integration, adoption, understanding. I think also onboarding, right? New designers, when they're coming on board, how long does it take them to understand how to build a product, but then to actually get on, to a team and understand, oh, I've got everything I have, I can hit the ground running. So I think those are definitely things that you should take into account when you are trying to map out that value.
So there's my original question around how do you link design system to an actual number or something. I think it's totally true. It's like you can't, right? But there was a ton of really great info in the answers right here around like, well, how do you then what should you do? And I think there's a couple things that there's mentions around like, hey, watch out for red flags, right? Like Brian, you were mentioning, watch out for these red flags around if they're asking for something, maybe that if they're asking for a direct line, maybe there needs to be some education done, right? Like maybe we need to educate at the leadership level. What are we actually doing here? But I also really like, Marcela, you were talking about putting together like a recap and like telling your story. And so we're getting to the end of the year here. And this is something that I was very fortunate that a manager told me really early in my career. He's like, you have to like market yourself. That doesn't mean like being like egotistical and shouting at people that like, look how awesome I am. But if you think about it, like, you could be creative with this. Like Spotify does its wrapped thing at the end of the year. It says like, hey, here's the songs you listen to the most. There's probably some interesting opportunities at a design system level of telling your story through like an end of the year recap that then also illustrates the sort of value you brought. And then you could, think about it like a product team where could you get some user quotes? Like, could you get some engineers to say like, making this color change was actually easier, 10 years ago, I had to change it in 600 places, but this time I only had to do it once. Like, even if you get like quotes like that, it sounds like maybe it sounds a little silly, but seriously, like getting a few quotes together and being able to tell your story is such an important part of really anyone's like role within the company. But I think the design system teams have such an opportunity to do something like that. Okay, we're at good time here. So let's Elyse, you were mentioning how you wanted to jump into some examples. Was there something specific you had in mind, or want me to go through some of the sheet here?
I mean, yeah, I'm happy to tell a story about a product that we've been working on, because I do think it's relevant to some of the stuff that's happening in the chat, right? Jay was asking, how are you measuring faster? And I think, to the point about marketing the system and talking about it and storytelling and like what Brian and Marcela are talking about, there's ways to show that your work is really impactful to a team without a quantitative number. And, I said this in the chat, but like, if I went, most executives, we can have feelings about our executives, right? But like they're people and they've been in this business and they're smart and they want to know, how is this impacting the things that I care about? They are a person with a job. And so if I'm going to my engineering executives and I'm like, I have done some napkin math and I can tell you that we're saving $25 a day for our engineers, they're going to be like, that's sus, right? Like that math, there's no way to make that exact. And they know that. And so they are not, usually, I think, looking for numbers like that. Again, there's no magic number. And so instead, if you can try to think about or understand what is it that your executives are caring about and how can you show the way that what you are doing is impacting that for the product teams. Because remember, we are building a tool to serve product teams. We are building a tool that is supposed to help them do their job. And, I've been talking about speed because that is the job that we are trying to do right now. You may have something different. But, for us at Color, last quarter, we started a new project. We're building an internal tool for our care team. So again, we're a cancer clinic. So we have doctors, clinicians, and care support people who are working directly with our patients, right? So we needed to get them out of like 5 different products and into a single home where they can talk to their patients, track their patient tasks, support patients as they go through their cancer diagnosis or what have you. And so we're like, okay, we need to start this project. We have different design needs, right? There's a lot of data density. There's a lot of tasks and actions and things that are not necessarily happening in our core product. And it was actually kind of funny to me because, we're starting to talk about this. And in my mind, I'm like, well, like, of course we're going to use the design system, right? Like, of course, like we have all these form components, we have all this stuff in there. But there was actually a discussion. There was, some engineering work to be like, okay, how are we going to build this thing? We're going to build this new product. Where does it go? Blah, blah, blah. Like, how are we going to build the UI? And they're like trying to calculate, like time and like roadmap and like all of this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but we have the thing, like we have it, like we can theme it. We've done this prep work. We knew this was coming. We were doing a bunch of like foundational theme preparation work. So like I can ship a theme, that's got like bigger, like smaller data density, right? Like, yeah, I can do that. Yes, we have all these form components. Like, yes, we have all of this. Yeah, there's a few things that we need to build. And I think at least for a lot of our engineers, they were like, oh, like we can just use all of this stuff. And like, it sounds really obvious to design system folks. Like everybody in this room is probably like, how is this even a thing? Like, how is this even a, valuable story? But to the business, we were able to go in and say, okay, this estimate that we're thinking about for how fast we can ship this, we can take off a month, right? We don't have to like worry about any of these form components. They're already there. And not only are they already there, we were able to help standardize around some like design and engineering best practices. Oh, we're already using this form validation tool. Let's just use that there. Now the code function is standard between our main product and our this internal tool. So we're able to actually move developers across to work back and forth on that a lot easier. So we were able to ship the V1 of this product in a quarter, which is like massive for the size of the team. I mean, I think we had like 4 or 5 engineers on it. And it was just like this massive amount of stuff that we just like didn't have to build. And so it's not like, again, Brian, you're talking about the color example. That's a small example, but the point here, Adam, we're talking about like, how do I tie this to business values? I'm going back to my, to my manager and my executives and being like, we were able to do this, like a month faster or twice as fast. Here's the list of things that we didn't have to build. Here's all the stuff that you got to take off your roadmap. Here's all the ways that we like reduced decision making and we didn't have to think about these things. In our case, this was not a team of front-end UI engineers, right? These are full stack developers. And so we're actually able to speed up how they work. They're building pretty good UIs, like straight out of the box. And so all of that stuff, like I don't have an exact number. Like there's literally no way for me to say it was 17 engineering days saved. But like I can give you a rough idea, a list of like all the things that we didn't have to do. And most importantly, talk about it to the right people and be like, this is the way that we were participating in this effort so that work can get celebrated. And so again, there's no number that I'm putting directly on that, but that was a really really big win, right? For our design system team, for me, for our product. And, speaking about that in a way that is, meaningful, right? Because the goal for the business was, how do we ship this really fast? How do we support our care team? How do we get them out of these tools? And we were able to get them out of those, all those other like 5 tools and into one place. Like that was the thing that they cared about in that case. Anyway, back to you, Adam.
Can I chime in? I kind of, Elyse, you said so many things, and I think I have like 2 things top of mind that I'd like to add here. But one of them, right, you're talking about, stating that people kind of know and understand, the impacts of design systems. And what I was getting from that was here, we've had many conversations with leadership and everyone's like, yeah, of course, I know what a design system is. Like, oh, yeah. Common components. Yeah, totally get it. But in reality, no, it still requires a little bit of kind of like hand holding and showing them, what it actually does and how you expect to kind of like bring that value forward, which is, the reduction of technical debt, the reduction of having to have everybody, recoding everything, a button, for example. 2021, we did an audit of, I don't even know how many different buttons, and all of those required teams and support, right? And that's an impact, right? It takes up time. And so I think that, as you are trying to still drive that the design system impact and business value, even with those partners, you still have to make them understand what it is that you are doing, right? It's not just designing. We have an example here. We're going through some site migrations. And I remember when I first joined UPS 8 years ago, we were standing up our, one of our brand new sites, and it took almost a year, maybe over 2 years, to get the site up and running and kind of all migrated and done for. And this recent migration, I want to say they're trying to cram, the migration of some of it within like 6 months. And I think that in reality ends up being a testament to kind of, if you already have this design system and you already have the pieces in place and people are just able to kind of like follow that guidance and just go and move forward, you're starting to see that, yes, packaging everything up and getting it in front of the customers is going to be a little bit faster and easier. And so again, maybe it can't be quantified, right? But at least from that perspective of being able to have, relevant examples, whether it's a before and an after, or we did this pilot and it did this. And then when we applied it to the next one, we were able to achieve X, Y, Z. And Adam, what you said previously about surveys, we've done plenty of internal surveys here. Initially, before we even had one of our design systems, we were like, what do you guys think? How is it creating products here at UPS? And we had answers such as, well, we would love a single source of truth. We would love to know who to go to when we had questions. We would love to have kind of like something that we are, instead of having to do the research or figure out how we're supposed to build products, but already have that direction. And so when you're asking them now, some of the questions are like, well, we'd love to have, I don't know, a better button, or different colors or tokens or something, something different, right? But you're starting to see kind of like the growth and evolution of a design system practice and its maturity. And I think that does have a lot of value. So I don't know if I'll put it back out there. Brian, I don't know if you want anything else or Adam.
I mean, yeah, and just put a wrap on it. Yeah, I think both way +1 to everything that you all said. I mean, when you mentioned towards the end, like folks initially asking what's the source of truth to like, hey, I want another button variant, that's a very good conversation. That's that cultural change of like planting the seeds. And so like when we talk about metrics, when we talk about things that really matter, I boil it down to like going back to quality of life for users. And that includes everyone, right? It can't just be designers and developers. It's quality of life for users. How well can they get self-help? How well can they remove the burden of understanding some of these design decisions or engineering decisions? Can they just pull it in? How quickly can they get to their work? So that's like all involved in quality of life for a user. And I think adoption is, we all kind of touched upon it here in different ways, but adoption, some folks say like, you have to toss everything in. Like you need to take the button, you need to take the form, you need to take this, that, and the other. But realistically, like any form of adoption, I think of like design systems a bit viral, right? Like you get a token in there, and all of a sudden you get another token, and then that token becomes like more of a complex pattern, and then everything becomes, and it just kind of permeates and it goes and it grows. And adoption at all scales is super important as a metric to follow when we're thinking about the teams that we are our primary consumers, and then our teams who are just so far removed, but like we need to get to them, right? We need to get something to them, and that goes back to that value. And then the last is really like the primary like people we serve are designers and developers, right? Not no shade to our product folks or engine or like leadership folks, like they're there, they care, but I think the people who use it the most are obviously designers and developers. And so one thing that I found near and dear to me is like building like a bridge to really reduce that gap, or like at least complete that gap for devs and designers talking to each other. And going back to we shouldn't just be hearing like, hey, I want another variant, but we should also hear that like developers and designers are able to communicate with each other because we normalize the language of how we talk about the work. We codified, we tokenized, whatever you want to call it. Like we've normalized this way so that developers and designers can talk to each other when they're talking about a variant or an option or things that exist or things that don't exist. It's no longer pie in the sky. It's a conversation that happens in real time. And it's a lot easier because in the past, I've definitely seen folks literally say something, because I have the privilege to be a designer and a developer and understand what they're trying to say. But a lot of times they're saying the same things, but they're talking right past each other, right? Like they're trying to come to a solution, and that's not what they want. So another metric is like, gut checking, whether through a survey or other ways, to understand how your designers and developer, that relationship is that closing. And it can't just be tools. It has to be the way that we talk about work. And design systems are a way to really shape that in conjunction with everything else that we just said.
This is all really great. And we're gonna jump to we're gonna, in the Miro board, there's a questions section. So please add some other questions there. We're gonna jump there in a second. But what Brian just said reminded me of one of my favorite stories. It sounds so simple, but I think it's very applicable here. So in my world, when I work with sales teams, the equivalent of components for us is like PowerPoint decks. Like, are they using our PowerPoint? The slides we put together, they're beautiful. Like, are they using them or not? Like, that's adoption for us. And not at my current company, but I joined a previous company. And I remember talking to the sales team, and there was no adoption, right? Sounds like kind of similar, right? There was no adoption of our PowerPoint decks. And I asked why. And they're like, oh, you're the first person to ask. But let me tell you, it's because the slides are all like pink. There's like a pink coloring theme. The company I was at, like there was different themes that you could choose from, and they choose whoever created the PowerPoint chose the pink theme. And it turns out that this person was trying to sell to like VP of IT, CISOs, VP of security. And he just flat out told me, I can't use a pink deck. Sorry. So I said, great. Well, if I change it to blue or white or, black, I don't know, some like sort of, I don't know, not pink color. He's like, yeah, I would use it in a heartbeat. So the point of this is no one thought to ask the sales team, is this useful or not? And so, Brian, you just mentioned ask them like, hey, we did this thing. Is this useful? And sometimes that really simple question is going to give you some really insightful answers. So anyways, let's jump to the questions here. I'm going to start with a simple one, maybe not so easy, but how do we get buy-in for accessibility?
I mean,
Who wants to go
you
ahead,
might get
Elyse?
sued. That's the way you could get buy-in. You might get sued. I like seriously, I'm like we're joking, but we're not joking because a lot of times at the end of the day, like that's what it takes. But I think the most effective thing for me, we thankfully have a lot of buy-in for accessibility at Color because we are a health tech company, right? We care a whole lot about access. And if that's not the case at your company, I know there's a couple folks who are much better positioned to speak to that. I'm thinking specifically about Daniel Henderson, Ede, I think is his last name. But I think y'all have done a panel or a thing with him. So, but anyway, right, like he's done a lot of this kind of work. But one of the biggest ways that I've found around this is, again, it's the storytelling and the showing, right? Like if you, even if we're just talking about like other engineers and designers, if you get them in front of your product using voiceover, I guarantee you they're going to be like, what? Like, this is, what do you mean that doesn't work? Like, how do I do this? How do I get to the next part of the form? They don't experience that. And it sounds really obvious to say like, oh, like empathy. But you know, we have so many jobs that we have to be doing. And it's very hard to like take all of them and think about all of them like equally all of the time. But you know, this is a thing that, you know, for us, we talk about the amount that the design system can take that effort off of our designers, our engineers' plates, right? Like what is already included, and then kind of educate on what is the part that you still have to continue to do, you know, from a product team perspective. Don't know if anybody else has any thoughts they want to chime in there.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The first thing about like being sued is like nobody likes to be sued. So like that's like a clear way to kind of maybe spark the conversation if you feel like there's no movement at all. Like, hey, you know, the product that we offer are servicing a certain demographic. Is there potential for some legal issues to arise? Like maybe we should look at this. The other piece that I think is like crucial that I think it's not so much about buying. Like sometimes we like to think about accessibility separate to our work, you know, our day to day as an engineer or our day to day as a designer. And it might feel separate, but I think my background is actually in architecture. I worked in architecture for 5 years, working in healthcare, building hospitals, and like if you didn't if you didn't do ADA, you were fired or you were wrong. So when I came into the market of like digital design, it's so foreign to me for people to not think about ADA at the level that, you know, folks have been fighting for these rights to have the equal way of experiencing a building. We should have that equal perspective when we think about design, that it's integrated into the work. So as a designer, if you're not very familiar with accessibility, there's really no excuse for you not to know some stuff. You should be online, learning, figuring out ways and making those decisions as you're doing the work. So it really becomes an educational piece. And if people don't know where to start, like there's maybe we can share some links after, but there's plenty of resources out there for you to just dive right in. And same from a developer standpoint. If you don't know about ARIA labels and attributes and all these like interaction patterns and all these things that are out there, like you should be reading up on that. It should be integrated to our work. So the moment we see accessibility as a burden or something that's tagged on, it's never going to be integrated in a way that it feels well, equal, right? We should really approach the work as that. And so if I'm a designer and I pick a color because it looks nicer, lighter, but it does not, and you're not checking for contrast, I'm going to say it, shame on you, right? Like you should be on that. That's part of our work. That's part of what we do. And it's not really only the design system's role to do that. We help codify it and try to build awesome things, but I've seen material design, which is a really great, you know, design system. I can code it in a way that'll make it completely inaccessible, right? There's so many ways that we can make these levers to have the outcome not be it. And so don't point the finger at your design system team. It really has to be integrated into work. And so I think we need to take a beat and check the culture of designers and developers. Is there a knowledge gap? Can we do some lunch and learns? Can we get together, talk about accessibility, read up on some things? There's so many things that we could do to make it a part of our work. And if it's not a part of it, like that's where the conversation starts. It's not so much like I gotta get by, and it's like let's just start doing it. And that's my approach to a lot of things, obviously, as I just said here.
And accessibility, it's not about disabilities, right? It's about people. And I mean, I can even see some websites that, I mean, yes, my vision may not be the greatest, but you know, sometimes I go on some sites and I'm like, what does that even button say, right? So it's like it becomes very challenging when some designers are thinking that some combinations work, and then obviously we have to think about, right, the different devices that we use and the contrast and like so forth. And so in reality, it's not just about designing, with accessibility in mind for disabilities, but I think it's just to improve the experience overall for everybody, regardless, right? Motion, it could cause motion sickness, contrast, having the right label so that if something is not working properly, you're able to still get a good experience and not cause that friction. Because many of us have had, a user experience where you're just like, oh my gosh, why can't this just work? Or why can't I read what it's saying? So I just think that it's the right thing to do. And there's so many resources that are out there. People are posting about it all the time. WCAG, right? They have a whole site where you can basically like Google specific things and you can just start learning about it. We were very fortunate here that we actually had one of our front-end developers got certified in accessibility, and kind of like that sense just started propagating, and now we have an agency that helps and supports us. And I try to bring in, or at least last year we did a training for the entire team and extended it out to our partners and designers to be able to learn more about it. And so I definitely think it is something that you should have as a top priority. It just makes you a better designer, a better developer, and you're able to deliver a better customer experience.
Now we probably only have time for one more question, but I'm going to encourage everyone on the call. And one of the reasons we love working within to design systems community is because there are leaders on this call who are very knowledgeable. And so here's my recommendation. There's some questions we're not going to be able to get to. Many of these we won't. Feel free to add comments to them. I know some of you in here know the answers to some of these. So like, let's help each other out. Let's add don't just wait for, us that we just happen to have the microphones. Don't just wait for us to answer them. Please feel free to add some comments on here. And I think that would be really helpful to everyone here. And so let's end with this one, because it goes back to something we talked about earlier. It's a long question, so I won't read the whole thing, but basically it boils down to this. We currently have a knowledge gap in this. I think, Brian, you were talking about the red flag of like, maybe they don't understand the design system. So someone has that situation where there is a knowledge gap between what the design system's doing and the value it's bringing and what leadership thinks it says. So how would you begin to close that gap? And I know it's not just, oh, we'll meet for 30 minutes and solve it. If it was that easy, that'd be fantastic. But how do we at least start to close the gap between, or better educate some members of the leadership team?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kick it off since I was talking about it earlier. One of the things is a lot of things we talked about today were like metrics of like, hey, when you have a design system, you get this, you get that, you get this. And one thing, if your team has unfortunately been dismantled, and so to speak, and it's meant to be like this thing that is a community project and everyone will get to it, and you feel like it's less invested in, I think the first thing you do is like look at that cadence. Has the adoption rate slowed down? Has the number of things that people needed, has that slowed down? Has the backlog increased? Is the new kind of approach to it effective? And so like, maybe it's not so much that they're not knowledgeable in design systems per se. Maybe there's more of a money thing and they're like, well, we can't afford someone dedicating here. And so it goes back to that point you brought up, Adam, of like, can we bring that link together? But if it is truly a knowledge piece and you think that there's like, maybe if I could just educate them on, understanding the value again, and those, you might feel like you might be screaming till your face turn blue. Like they might not hear you. So what I would go again is like, go back to those metrics and tell the story of the impact of that decision. Like now that we've made the decision, we have seen that the button has fallen out of compliance in terms of what we think is alignment to the system. Or we have seen now not many people are adopting our tokens and now they're creating new colors. Like there might be these instances because folks think that like once you have all your components and your colors and it's in there, wrap up shop, here we go. But like the product evolves, things change, designs change, coding frameworks change, right? Like things evolve. And so that piece we need to kind of make sure that their understanding is the work is not done. You may feel like it is, but hey, there's a new Next.js that just got dropped. New React 19 is around. Like all these things are coming out, AI, whatever. Like there's a lot of things that still need to be done. And so it goes back to that storytelling. So I'll stop there because I don't want to I want to give other people to talk to.
Can I chime in really quickly just on that? Because I think one of the things that really helped us here at UPS also, it was getting advocates, right? So sometimes it's not just going straight to leadership and telling them, what is really needed. But if you get those advocates, the people that are in the development or other designers or right, and you start vouching for it, and they're not just hearing it from you, then you're actually able to kind of like get more right from the numbers of like, there is a desire, there is a need, and look, this is what we're trying to propose. And so I do think that design systems are a culture change, as we mentioned before, where you're actually able to have open communication and collaboration. And as you go to those leaders, it's not just about, hey, can you invest in this, but maybe also working on the side on like a product, and having a pilot and saying, you know what, we were able to get this traction with this collaboration, and we really think this is going to be, be that difference and game changer. And so I do think that that is a way to kind of like get that attention. And I think Elyse, you wanted to comment something as well. Sorry, I kind of jumped in there, but that one, I kind of had to say something about.
Oh, good. I know we're at time. I hope everybody can stick around for a couple extra minutes, but I just wanted to bring a little bit of a different perspective to this one, because I think it's really interesting that the question, that you were asking is that we have a knowledge gap around the value. And when I'm seeing something like, the business decided to dismantle the design system team, the business is encouraging custom solutions and fragmentation, my brain isn't going, they don't understand the value. My brain is going, what is it that my leadership wants? Because you're seeing that as fragmentation. What does your leadership see it as? What are they trying to encourage? Are they focused on innovation? Are they focused on product teams having more autonomy? Are you not in a phase of consolidation and consistency? Are you in a phase of exploration? What is the business even trying to do? And so I would argue that the framing of this question, is it a knowledge gap? Or can you think of some different ways to support what your leadership is trying to get the business to do? When we think about, design system impact and improving the impact, it's not a defensive posture of, well, we did this and we built this button and this was great and we made this go faster and all of this, look how great we are. It's what is it that we're trying to serve this business, right? We are trying to make it possible to do the thing that the product team needs to do the thing that leadership needs to do. And if they want product team autonomy, right? They want to explore some new creative design visions. How are you helping them? And if you're not helping them, they're going to think that you're in the way. And I think we need to really change our posture on what impact and what the design system is for, what the value is and what it is for, because we're so caught up in finding a way to say we're good, we're valuable, our way is right. And you have to do that. And if you would just do it, then you would see all this value and you would understand. And I think that we will get a lot more traction. I think, Brian, you're talking about just start doing the work and showing the value. And that's the work that needs to get done by the teams. So I'd really encourage you to think about what is it that is actually needing to get done, and what is it that they're trying to focus on? Adam.
Yeah, well, look, I just, I want to say a personal thank you to Brian, Marcela, Elyse. This has been incredible. I've certainly learned a lot. We've asked some tough questions. We've certainly covered some really, really tough subjects. But I hope everyone on the call took at least one or two pieces of advice and nuggets that you can take back to your design system teams. So thank you again. Thank you to everyone who came. Sil, I'm going to pass it back to you, and as we close it out here.
Thank you so much, Adam, and to our panelists. This was amazing. The energy in this panel, wow, this could go on forever. So much that we could chat about. Thank you so much. Please give our panelists a big round of applause in the chat by using your favorite emoji or erection function here in Zoom. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this panel. And also thank you to all of you for attending this panel. We had people from all around the world joining us. And yeah, Please have a look at the Miro board. So many people joined us today. So cool. Also, I love all the memes people posted.
It's fine. It's
to
fine.
have a look.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Everything is fine. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. We will send you a link to the recordings and also to the Miro board. You get feel free to check out all the resources and be active here in the Miro board. Leave some questions, some more questions, or answer some questions in the comments. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Thank you so much to our panelists and to Omlet for making this event possible, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. It was good fun. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Sil.
Thank you all. It was great.